So how are we going to go from this bag of clay that I've distributed to you all to a glazed cup that's been fired in the kiln with a handle you can actually hold on to? Has to be big enough for some fingers, a foot. Notice that the rim on this is smaller than my pinky nail. Otherwise it's too big to go in your mouth. And if it feels good in your hand. Well, we need to gather our tools. So I have a cup of water. I like to have a brush too, a ruler if you have it. Otherwise, we'll just be talking about parts of your body, like the size of your hand, as big as your pinky, littler than your pinky. I like to have a paddle that's just from the dollar store, a wooden spatula. It's got a nice curve on it. We talked about the serrated rib with these edges that go up and down. But don't worry if you don't have one. A fork is a wonderful substitution. And I'll be using a fork in our demonstration today. And also, if you have your tools, you have this flexible metal rib. And it's really nice because you can bend it and curve it, and because you're stronger than the clay, you can force the clay to bend with that. But if you don't, I just took an old plastic card that I got in the mail and I cut it like a half moon, and that will work equally well. If you have your tools, you should have a wire, and that's for cutting clay among other things. But if you don't have that, no worries. You can use some dental floss or thread, and I'll be using that today just to show you. Okay, so we have this bag of clay, but we have to get a square out of it. You could also just grab it, but my preference, you can see where I've grabbed it in the past. Just with my fingers and ripped it out. But it's just to take some, your wire or some dental floss or thread, pull that down. You want it to be about 3 fingers wide. 3 fingers wide. Okay. How about this ball of clay? See, it's about 3 fingers. That's a good length. Then always make sure that you just wrap your clay back up. That's really important. I always lose the little tie, so I just put a rubber band on that. Then move that out of the way. Okay, so now you have this square, but we're going to pound it into a ball. If it's too little, your cup's going to be this big. But this is a practice, so we don't really care. But if it's too big, the first time it's hard. So that fits nicely in my hand. The nicer the ball that you start out with, the easier it is. So just keep pounding it. Figure out how to pound. Notice I have my hand curved, because the clay will follow that curve. So now if you have really hot hands, you will find that you need to dip your hands every once in a while in a little bit of water. Cool them off. Otherwise you're going to dry your clay. Okay, once you have a nice ball, nice ball, you stick your thumb in it. There's some children's rhyme about sticking. Jack Horner he's like stuck his hand in the pie and said, "What a good boy am I." I don't know what that was about, but it makes me always think of it. You want to go all the way down to the bottom. Now, if you go through like that, you can just patch that up. But you do want to go down to the bottom, because the overall thickness of this is going to be less than your pinky nail. See, So you want to go down to the bottom and you begin pinching out the bottom. And the motion is this. And you're moving the clay slightly while you're doing this. So start at the bottom. So notice this is where the pressure is. Down on the bottom and go round and round slowly. And this is what it looks like on top. It's slowly starting to widen. Okay, once you have a decent thinness at the bottom, go up slightly, maybe a nail's worth, and now begin pinching above that, round and round. So notice I was pinching here and now I'm pinching here. And this is what it looks like now, okay? All right, once you go there, then bring your hand down a little bit and begin pinching there. Now, if you pinch too hard, you'll have all these lumpy bumps. And if you pinch too soft, nothing will happen. So we're gonna use the story of Goldilocks in the Three Bears a lot. And Goldilocks was, I think she was on her way to her grandmother's house, but she stopped in the forest because she was tired and hungry at this house and nobody was there, so she goes in. And there's some porridge, 3 bowls of porridge sitting on the table, and one porridge is too hot, one porridge is too cold, and one is just right. So she eats that. And then she gets tired and she's sitting in the chair in the living room, and one chair is too hard and one chair is too soft and one chair is just right. So she sits there. And but just like Goldilocks, you're gonna find, is your work too dry, too wet, too soft, too hard? You're always going to be trying to find just right, like Goldilocks. Okay, go round and round. Now, if for some reason you thought you were done, this is obviously not done because it's way bigger than my pinky. But I'm going to take that floss, dental floss again. I'm going to cut it in half to show you what I've just done. I was pinching down at the bottom, right? So that's nice. Oops, kind of. Then it's not even, because I wasn't pinching, so it's thick here. And look how thick this is. So I obviously am not done. But the pinching motion's like this. This is what you're doing round and round. Then you go up, round and round, and then you go up, round and round, all the way around. Okay. Never be afraid to smash your work together and start again. Ceramics is all about learning new skills, and any new skill requires practice. I'm just going to smash this together again. Got my hand like that. Making a ball again. Clay loves to be pressed. Okay, if your hands are hot, just stick them in some water. Down at the bottom again, pinching. Round and round she goes. When it feels right, come up. Notice that my hand is not out this way, because if I go out this way, it's going to widen. So my hand is pretty much straight up and down. And then at some point, I start to do 2 hands round and round. A student at pickup the other day mentioned that, when I was mentioning that your work will stick on your boards, and she said, what about cardboard? And I think that's the best. I need to find out who said that, because that person deserves some extra credit points. Cardboard works really well. And it can turn too. So my hands are going like this, round and round. I can do this really fast. You know, if this is taking you a long time and you're starting to have cracking up here, just take your sponge. If you don't have your tools yet or sponge, I just cut a little kitchen sponge. Okay, I dip that in some water. I'm wringing it out. And you can just make the edges less cracky if you're having cracking problems. Okay, so you can see that it's getting wider, right? If yours is going out like that, once again, that means your hand, instead of being straight up and down, is this way. And it will follow you out, or it'll fall. If you want it to go in, move the clay in. You're stronger than the clay at this point. It's not been fired. It's still very soft. Which brings us to the topic of clay. When you pull it right out of your bag, that's considered soft or wet clay. Now, when it's been allowed to dry for a little bit, that's called leather hard. Now, if you can still move it gently, see, it keeps its shape, so it's no longer wet clay, the 3 stages clay, wet. It's no longer fresh out of the bag. It keeps its shape a little bit. You can still bend it. However, if it is once it goes to hard, leather hard, if you bend it, you'll cause cracking and stuff. See the cracking going on in here? So leather hard, wet, leather hard, soft, leather hard, hard, and leather hard does not like to be bent. This is weakened there. I would never put this on a piece because it would crack. And then you have bone dry. This I made yesterday. I actually put it in the oven at 100 degrees. And bone dry is very brittle. It's your most fragile. The nice thing, if you have some little bits that are bone dry, remember I said to have a container with water? So this is just a sauerkraut container. And I'm going to take this bone dry piece and put it in there. Because it's bone dry, it's going to start to dissolve very quickly. And we're going to use that as slip later on. So back to this piece. I want this piece to go up. So I'm going to be up. You can also put your hand in here and pull it up. You have to see what technique you like the best. Okay. But it's getting thinner. All right, it's getting closer to my pinky. Once again, if you have cracking, just take that damp sponge, put it in some water, wring it out. You never want water to sit all over your piece or down at the bottom. If it's sitting for more than a minute, that's too long. Now, what's the shape on this? What's the form I have? Okay. Do I want this to be wide or do I want this to be up and down? The other thing to consider is paddling. And you can paddle an edge. It's relatively gentle. It's a lot of repetitions. And that will help the form of yours too. Now, if you don't like the up and down of this, you can turn it upside down and pat it. It makes it more level, but it also makes it square, and square is not nice on your lips. So in the end, you'll always want to soften that, like this is softened. Okay. You know, feel your cup. This is just a practice, you know. And you'll want to cut into your practice, right? Now, if it's thin all over and you still want it to go up more, you can take more clay and make a coil. I'm just going to move that out of the way a little bit. I grabbed a little bit of clay. I'm gently squeezing it. If you squeeze too hard, you'll have ridges on it, right? So it's gentle squeezing, so something's happening, right? And then rolling it. Now, I like to roll out, put a little twist in it. It helps it stay as a nice coil. If you press too hard, you'll flatten it. So hard enough so that something's actually happening. I'm gonna need all that. But not too hard so that you're flattening it, right? Let's go all the way around. Yes. I'm going to put this around. It's overlapping. And I'm going to cut that with my needle tool or a kitchen knife on a diagonal. And then join them. Okay, when you join two pieces, you do what's called a technique that's called slip, score, compress, and lute. And so scoring is this marking it up. You have the serrated you have the serrated rib. You can use that. Otherwise, just grab a fork and score that up. Score both pieces. You want to score both of these. And remember how I added the clay to this water? It's becoming murky because the clay dissolves. It hasn't been fired. So any clay that hasn't been fired will dissolve. And you can put it on there with a brush or your finger. But the scoring, slipping, we're going to join these with the process called luting. And in luting, you're just mushing the clay from one side to the other. This is only if you want your clay, your cup to be taller. You have to do the inside and the outside. Notice how the little cardboard allows you to gently turn this. I really love that suggestion. If I'm concerned that it's not joined well enough, I'll take my fork and score it up. And then I will use my little rib. You have to decide how you like to use a rib. This is kittens and puppies also. If I manhandle this or Godzilla this, this will just smash up. This is very soft, right? But the coil on top, you can see how it's added some extra height to this. Now this is way too soft to put the foot on. So you have to do this in stages. Just let this rest. If you have other homework or housework, or you're watching your kids, just set this next to you, because what you're looking for, I made another one. I made a cup earlier. We're going to look at that, because what you're looking for is for this cup to be not too soft and not too hard, leather hard. Just right, so that when I pick it up, it's not going to smush all over. Okay, if I bash this, you know, it's leather hard, it's going to move, right? So you can see how I've refined the edges. I spent a lot of time on this, really paying attention to those edges. You can use your finger, you can use a sponge. I had turned it upside down. I still have to be very gentle with it. It's kittens and puppies. You know, I tapped it gently. I used my sponge. This is not thrown on the wheel. It takes a lot of practice to make something really refined. I just wanted a more of a bowl shape. You'll see me start to hold things when I'm ready to be done on a board or this cardboard, so you can see the shape of this. I was looking for a bowl shape. It's firm enough now that when I pick it up, it's not going to fall apart. And I can put the foot on here now. I did make the foot earlier, because when you first make it, right, and you are making that coil, if you make it too small, your cup's gonna fall over. But if you make it and try to put it on right away, it can smash. So this I made yesterday. I watched it till it was just right, and then I wrapped it in plastic. And you're gonna need plastic bags or plastic of some kind. I'm gonna score this. Score this. How do you attach things? Score, slip, compress, and lute. I put that dry clay in there, and now it's like dissolved into nothing, right? Use your finger or a brush, get some slip on there. It acts like glue. Score both sides, score this. I once had a student, he was an intermediate student that arrived at my doorstep, so I don't know who he had beginning with, but everything he made, his foot, any handle, foot, any attachments, they all fell off. And when you actually, when you actually looked at it, he didn't score very well. He was worried about air holes getting in there. But don't worry about that. You have to score it, and then you're going to compress it. Now you need to lute it, so the clay needs to go from one side to the other. And that's actually where the wooden tool comes in very nicely, because you need to join the clay up and down. What am I talking about? And notice I'm holding this carefully, right? So the clay from here is going into here. You need to join that all the way around. And then you'll have to smooth it out. Now that it's upside down is also nice to smooth your work. You'll see me going back and forth a lot. I like to go back and forth when I'm working. You know what? I don't know why, but I'm gonna add a tiny little coil here. That's gonna go around the bottom. It just needs some additional clay. I think I let that dry out too much. It just feels a little hard. Now, you need to not only compress the lute, slip, score, compress, and lute, and join the inside, outside, but the inside too. I'm just gonna grab a spoon to see if that will help me. Yeah, here we go. If you have your tools, you can use the wooden tool. You just need to grab something. Everything's a tool. An art supply, art when you're an artist. The other thing I'm also going to do is lightly pat this. You know, you can pick it up and look at your shape. How's it going? Got to make sure all those edges are joined. Okay, I'm going to turn that upside down, or right side up. I'm going to tap it a little bit, because slip, joining two pieces, slip, score, compress, and lute. So compress is just pressure. So kittens and puppies. Here's my bowl right now. If you need to go away for some reason, and it's just right, make sure you wrap it in plastic. Now, the handles, I have several videos for you to watch on handles. But a really simple handle is, you know, to take a wad of clay, gently squeeze it. You can start to roll it in the air a little bit, and then roll that puppy. You're going to roll it. This is just a really simple handle. The videos I have on the assignment, you can watch some beautiful handles being made. Then I like to press it. And then I like to take my sponge and soften it. You never want a handle that's jagged. You have to decide the shape. Do you want kind of a V? Do you want it to all be the same? Do you want it to be kind of a V? You can also gently pull it a little bit. And you can cut that with your kitchen knife or your fork. All right, and then you have to see how it looks. You know, is it too big, too small? Kittens and puppies, you know, it's kind of big and clunky. So I made a handle earlier. Let's see if I can find it. Here we go. Here's my handle. I made this handle earlier, and so it's leather hard and it's getting stiff, right? So I've already tested it out. I like the shape, the length. It's smaller than my pinky. The thickness here matches the thickness there. And I have to decide where I'm going to put it. You have to score those areas too. slip, score, compress, and lute. Putting some slip on there. If you don't have slip yet, just use water. And now I'm gently pressing that in. I'm compressing that in. And I'm going to make sure that it's joined. You don't want to see any cracking. If you need to, put a little tiny coil there. Notice this cup, I put a little place for my thumb to rest, and I really like that. Not just the top, but you have to make sure you get it on the bottom or they'll pop off. The sides. And then notice I cut that on a diagonal, so when I place it there. So for Wednesday, for the next class, you need to have a practice mug. It's your practice, it's not your final mug. But you need to practice because you need to find out what's hard for you. Make sure you get the sides. And underneath. Make sure you compress that. It's gentle pressure. You're not Godzilla. It's kittens and puppies, but you still need to press that. And then you can see where I need to refine here, right? I'm not done yet. It's not, I'm not going to leave these gaps in here. It all needs to be refined, and that all takes time. Notice I'm never, ever leaving a gob of water. If you get this all wet, I just showed you that water plus clay, when it's not fired, turns into slip or this watery clay, right? You can see that. It doesn't take long. So kittens and puppies, I'm holding this very gently. So next class, before the next class, you have to upload your cup. There's no surface design on this yet. It's a little too fragile for me to do that. But I am going to wrap this up. I'm going to put it back on my little cardboard. I'm going to wrap it up. Make sure your plastic doesn't have holes in it. If it's perfect, double wrap it. Why? I don't know why. If I leave this wrapped with one sheet, by tomorrow it'll be nearing bone dry. So if it's perfect and you don't want it to dry out more because you're still working on it, use 2 sheets of plastic all the way around. I'm holding it on the cardboard, and then I'll just keep it on the board. Put it out of the way of your cats and family members and all of that. Okay, thanks.